Good afternoon, and thank you for joining Women at Ardent today for our webinar, Take Charge of Your Journey, an empowering story of personal and professional growth. Hello, I'm Julie Cromines, AVP of Brand Strategy at Ardent, and I'll be your host today. Before we begin, I'd like to review a couple of housekeeping notes. As you know, if you've previously attended a Women at Ardent webinar, all lines are muted, but we encourage you to interact with the speakers or each other through the chat function. At the conclusion of the presentation, we will answer your questions. If this is your first Women at Arden webinar, we welcome you and are glad you've joined us today. When you exit the webinar, you will be redirected to a post-session survey. Please complete this survey as it helps us plan future webinars. I would like to start by reciting the purpose of Women at Arden: to network with and learn practical solutions from one another, sharing industry knowledge and leadership experience. The goal is to support all women in our organization to overcome gender barriers and prepare themselves for leadership opportunities. We believe that having more diverse leaders makes our company stronger. This month, we recognize Dr. Andrea Cooley, cardiothoracic surgeon at UT Health East Texas, who's been with the company about 6 years. Dr. Cooley is very passionate about education, whether furthering her own or educating her patients about their diagnosis and treatment in understandable terms. She worked with marketing to create a YouTube video, AFib, New Solutions to an Old Problem, that's generated almost 1 million views and has patients from as far away as Australia calling her for help. During the pandemic, when COVID-19 was new and safety protocols kept changing, she was instrumental in helping to draft and communicate information to doctors, nurses, and employees. Dr. Cooley is considered by others as an advocate for nurses. She is a thoughtful, thorough, and caring physician for her patients and their families, and we're proud to recognize her today. We look forward to hearing from Arden's Chief Operating Officer, Terika Richardson, and Dell Oliver, former CNO of Mountainside Hospital and charter member of Arden's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program. Terika will discuss her journey and the support she's received from Dell as her mentor. Thank you for joining us today, ladies.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks again. It's exciting, as Terika mentioned, to be here and to see so many faces who've joined in. So welcome, everybody. So with that, I think we're ready to get started. I'll share with everyone, I'm Dell Oliver, and my guest today, and I'm glad to have had the opportunity to participate in Women at Ardent, particularly in Take Charge of the Journey is the title of what we'll be doing today. And that's super exciting because the person that I'll be sharing and talking with and letting her share her journey is someone that I've known for many, many years. I won't actually list the years, but many, many years. And together as women of color and women in the profession of healthcare, we've been together and watched each other's journey, and hopefully you'll be able to gain something from this. So with that said, I'll start off with Terika. We'd like to share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start to take charge of your journey from college. We have 3 sections we like to cover: the college time, what got you into healthcare. We'll start from the beginning, in the middle, when you start, becoming promoted as a officer in healthcare, and then in the end, how you're paying it forward to influence. So if you want to tell a little bit about yourself, then I get started with the questions.
Well, thank you, Dell, and thank you to everyone who's joined today. So humbled to have everyone across our organization here to talk a little bit about our experiences and what we've gleaned working together. I have the unique pleasure of serving as the Chief Operating Officer here at Ardent, and I've been here almost 4 months, and it's been a great journey. I came most recently from Advocate Healthcare in Chicago. Prior to that, I spent 14 years with HCA, and that is where I had the unique opportunity of running into Dell and meeting Dell and truly becoming a lifelong friend of Dell, and also mentee and mentor relationship. So that's been a part of my journey. Born and raised at the wonderful in Detroit. I went to the University of Michigan. That's my background, where I'm from. But I've had the opportunity to grow in my career in many different areas across the country, taking advantage of different opportunities that maybe on paper weren't something that I was immediately interested in, but had the opportunity to grow because it offered an opportunity for breadth and depth that I didn't have, or an experience that I perhaps had not had in my past. And so had the opportunity to truly travel and see different areas and different places across my career path over the last few years.
Well, thank you for that. So, why healthcare, Terika? Out of all the professions growing up in Detroit, and in the time that you did, and University of Michigan, which wasn't traditionally known at the time as a very diverse school, why healthcare as a young African American female, and as a female, and it's pretty pretty dominant and dominated by a male sport, so to speak.
Sure. My why starts really early in my life. My father was a fireman in the city of Detroit, and he fell actually from a building and actually hurt his back. So he was in and out of surgeries, and he was in and out of physical therapy. And I was a young child with him as I went down that road with him. And so I got a chance to see in the city of Detroit, like at that time, predominantly African American. All of our doctors were Black, and they all had like this wonderful like spirit and just interest in getting this man to become back to his baseline, you know. And I was enamored by healthcare. I was enamored by the industry. And that experience, I think, allowed me to think of healthcare as an opportunity for my growth as an individual and a place to land. And you know, as I continued to mature in that space, you know, I had the unique fortune of running into so many people who were interested in healthcare, but didn't really know about all of the full facets of it. And one of the talks I went to was for my friend who was talking about healthcare leadership. And I'm like, well, tell me more about healthcare leadership. I need to hear more about this. And it opened an entire door. It opened an entire world that I did not know existed. So I think it speaks to the fact that, you know, we have these traditional views of where we should be in life, what we should be doing. In my head, when I thought of healthcare, I was going to be a nurse or I was going to be a doctor, because that's what I thought healthcare was. And through this chance encounter, where we had the opportunity to hear someone speak about it, this whole world was open up to me. And I tell you, once I walked through the door and was bit by the bug, I haven't looked back since.
That's great. That's great. And most of the time we do hear family influence makes a difference too. And I won't poke at Motown may have had an influence because of that too. So we'll save that for a later discussion. Besides your dad and as you journey through your career in college, tell me about who may have influenced you to stay on the course of healthcare, and when did leadership become a thought in healthcare for you?
Sure. So, you know, I have to say I've had so many people who have influenced my world and influenced my journey. Obviously, my mother's a huge piece to that. I have to give a moment of airtime for her. First in our family to go to college, first to go to graduate school. And her influence was, if you're going to do something, you do it all the way. So you make sure if you're going to do it, if this is the path you're choosing, go all the way. And so I that sticks with me today. I instill that into my children as well. From a leadership perspective and others who have influenced me, I've had to tell you that I've had influence from people so much in the positive light, people who are doing amazing, great things with very little and really giving back to their community. So a number of community leaders that existed in the city of Detroit, who I had the opportunity to interface with through volunteer work, still I interface with today. And they definitely showed me the importance of giving back and paying it forward. That everybody has to bring someone with them along their way. And that is an important piece to being a leader. From a leadership perspective, I had the chance encounter to meet with earlier on the COO at the time of the Detroit Medical Center, and her name is Gwen Mckenzie. If you know Gwen, Gwen has traveled the world in healthcare leadership. She was a huge mentor of mine as well. She taught me that in order to be a leader, you have to be authentic. No one's going to follow someone if they don't know who they are as an individual, what makes them tick, what's important to them, what do they do when they leave the office. Those things are important, and bringing your true authentic self to leadership is a very important piece to this overall puzzle. And I tell you, when I think about how I show up at work, I'm so influenced by that each and every day. I'm going to be me in Kroger, and this is the same me you'll see in this office. So that's a very important piece to how I've determined my leadership style and structure will be brought forward in whatever organization or wherever I am.
And so moving forward, thank you. So moving forward with that, all leadership challenges and learning experiences are not positive. There are things that we have no control over in our career, and we'll get to the part where we met in the middle, because it wasn't in the beginning, but in the middle. What would you say some of the things that taught you lessons that may not have been most positive that kept you going on the journey?
Early in my leadership career, I've seen, unfortunately, where leaders have not been really clear in communicating sort of the path along the journey, the way that we're going, the direction. And it's caused a lot of internal, churn and concern. And early in my career, when I was working with an organization, a small not-for-profit, there was a lot of concern around what we were doing, why we were doing it. And I had the opportunity just to watch what that created. And so it really stuck with me that you have to be clear about who we are, where we're headed, what we're doing at each and every turn, because people are constantly looking to you as a leader for guidance. And for me, I think that is an important lesson learned as we even continue to grow in an organization, over communicating, trying to make sure we tell the why behind what we're doing, how we're doing it. That communication piece is so important. You oftentimes, and Dell, I'm glad you asked this question, you learn so much from people who are great examples, but you also learn from kind of those missteps too, right? And taking those in and really truly allowing it to shape who you are as a leader or how you communicate.
That's great, because I think in summary of that particular statement was, so you kept going despite those obstacles, you kept going. And that's for our listeners out there, is despite those challenges and those obstacles. I think one of the things we learned early in the development program is the best leadership lesson to take with you, to pay it forward, is to learn what not to do once you become a leader, because it's easier to learn the good things. So now we moved into becoming a part of what we did in our past 14 years ago, the development program, getting on that journey to become a COO, a CEO, and then having marriage and having children. And how did you balance that first off? Because that's one of the things that we had met early on: no children, no husband, and starting the career. And for those listeners, how do you balance all the balls in the air, and your parents, your mom, the health of your parents too? If you could speak to that and how that kept your journey going.
Sure. I have to pause and just give them a little background. So Dell, I met Dell at HCA when we were working together. Dell ran the COO development program. And so she was instant mentor for me and for my colleagues as we were going through this very regimented program of becoming chief operating officers. And there have been many days where we have had to sort of powwow and touch base on next steps, or how to solve a problem, or just the Dell shepherd, I would say, half of our organization around the COO development program through HCA, and really truly helped us to understand how to become a leader, understand how to enter an organization, and to develop the skill set necessary for success. So met Dell very, very early on. Joined the program. I didn't have children. I had no husband at the time. And, I will tell you, as I have grown, as my family has grown, leadership has become more and more important. These lessons that I've learned along the way, so very important. The importance of being balanced is important to note here. Having the notion of children and a family while juggling a career has been a challenge. There's been times where I've taken assignments and with HCA and beyond, where I've had to leave my family behind and balance home life and work life and try to move family forward. My husband's a physician, so he's equally as aligned in healthcare and has a whole, line of credibility and things and aspirations that he believes in. So having to balance two working individuals who are in healthcare has been no small feat. I have two children, their ages 8 and 10. And so balancing their needs and desires are important. And I have to tell you, there are days where it bleeds together. I think people think that you get a chance to kind of cut off one aspect of who you are and walk into the door of work. And we all know that that's not the case. It's a constant balance. And I've made the decision and made sort of just the mantra that I'm always going to have balls juggling in the air. And it's really about at what point do I pivot and make sure this ball has my most attention and has the amount of focus that's necessary to maintain. And then when do I pivot back to something else? So today, my focus may be the fact that this child needs a little extra support from mom, who's currently in Nashville, and the child is in Chicago right now. So that may be my focus. But I tell you, it's that constant shifting back and forth and recognizing that you are a holistic human being. You bring all of that to the table. That is your strength. The fact that you have all these facets to your life, bring that to the table authentically. I've also shared with Dell, and Dell has been super supportive of me as I've grown in my life, my career, my family. So I shared with her one of the most challenging time frames, and she really helped me through this, was when I took on an interim CEO role at HCA. And it was one of those situations where my home life and work life were definitely not necessarily in balance at that time. My mother was on hospice in my home and was asked to take on this interim CEO role. And I had to call Dell and say, listen, this is what's happening. And, how do I balance this? How do I ensure that these two very important, trying things have the right amount of attention from me to do it correctly? So, it's life. It's life. It's about having people that you can confide in, that you can help navigate. Dell's been a little bit of that guiding light in many regards, but having the wherewithal to recognize that your life is very complex, and you bring all of that to work, you bring all of that home. You are a holistic being that are going to go back and forth, and it's important to recognize that and honor it.
That's great. And I think the thing that we learn together too, because it's to expect the unexpected and how to balance that as women, chartering waters that we were unfamiliar with, and how do you balance the health of a parent in the middle of a career, and in the middle of being a minority. And I'm gonna pivot to the minority side also with how would you, in addition to all of that with family and children, and in an organization, not just HCA, but as we've looked at data, nationwide, there are very few minority females in healthcare leadership role at the executive level. What kept you going in that space when you may not have seen at that time anyone who looked like you as an executive? What did you use to keep you in your mind engaged, looking a little different at the time? Except me. I mean, I know we did look alike in some perspectives, so I do count that as a positive. But for those around, is women, is minority, is healthcare, is leadership, is parents, is children, is husband. Okay.
Sure. I think for me, it was about being in a great space, being in a place that nurtured my desires, and also feeling this sort of sense that you have to have visual sort of representation in your life, right? You have to have people who understand your journey, understand your path. And I've been purposeful about creating relationships with people who understand what I'm going through. Our relationship is an example of that. I have other mentors too who who have faced some of the things that I faced. I am a minority woman, yes. I have many facets to me, and I'm seeking people in my journey and my path inside of healthcare and also outside of healthcare who have aspired towards leadership roles, and hearing their stories, that has been a huge wealth of knowledge for me. And so having and a source of strength, I should say, because people face different levels of adversity across their careers. People need to see people who are growing that look like them, that are leading that look like them. And so you have to seek those people, whether they're inside your sector or outside. And I think that's an important piece to the puzzle.
It is, and thank you for that too. And in addition to that too, as you look toward now we're in the COO CEO phase and we've progressed. If you had to look back and offer advice to a young Terika or to people on this call who are looking to journey forward or maybe at a position in their career where they're not sure to make that next step forward, what advice would you give or share with them?
I think one, being clear about where you want to go is key, right? What you want to do. I think that's key. Doing that soul searching is very, very important. Two, having, as I mentioned to you beforehand, mentors that can help guide, that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can have the crucial conversation with before the conversation, and role play. Those things are very important. And being purposeful around seeking mentors, I think is key. There is a great article that was written by Forbes magazine. It's called Creating Your Personal Board. And it's this idea of having a full slate of individuals who represent different aspects of the world that you desire to be in. And it talks about having different generational sort of mentors, having people inside of the sector that you want to be in, having people outside of, having individuals who are also sponsors in your world, right? People who can speak on your behalf at the table, on behalf of your work. Those things are very, very important. So it takes a lot of time, I think, and a lot of thought process around making sure you're surrounded with people who can help inform you on those next steps. You asked also a part of that question, Dell, if I could tell my younger self, what would I tell my younger self sitting in this role? I think one of the things that is very important is when you're trying to grow and when you're aspiring towards that next step, obviously you take everything. Like you say yes to all of the opportunities that get you to the table, that allow for you to hear the conversation in the room. And that is a piece that I think that is very, very important. Having the ability to take a next step, even though it may not look exactly like what you thought it may be, think about the transferable skill sets that you can garner by saying yes to a role, saying yes to a project, or even be asking proactively your supervisor, direct report, hey, is there something I can work on from a project perspective to garner this specific skill set that I need as a part of my next step and my maturation? And then the last thing I would say is being very purposeful about how you engage and how you select roles in your world, being purposeful about it from the perspective of understanding the skill set that you can garner and make sure that that's something that will ultimately get you where you want to go.
Very good. I know we have some chats. I can't remember if Jesse or someone can give us some questions from the chat. If you're open for some thoughts from our chat room as we getting close to the end. Let me open it up too.
Hi, yes, thank you, ladies. The first question is, what if I want to have a mentor relationship with someone as a mentee, but don't? What do you recommend I do?
I'm sorry, rephrase. I did not, you faded out a little bit.
What if I want to have a mentor relationship with someone as a mentee, but I don't? What do you recommend I do?
Sure. You know, I think, and Dell, you chime in here too, because you've had the opportunity not only to be mentor, but mentee as well. You know, I think it's important to be honest and candid and have a sit down conversation or reach out to that person, do an informational interview of them, understand how they have gotten to their place in life, and then ask the question. If you never ask, it's always going to be no. Dell, tell me your thoughts.
That's a good point. And everyone may not be the best mentor that you choose, but you learn from everyone. So they could be an advisor. And you know, speaking to and thanks for the comment on personal board of directors. So you surround yourself with people that can give you advice. It may be advice and mentoring, and everyone has more than one mentor. I mean, we have great mentors in our lives that bring different things to the table. So if you choose not to be, fine, and be mentored, but I think the careful selection and listening to information that's going to help propel you forward to the goals you want to achieve, both personal and professional, will really help. And I think one thing that Terika and I enjoyed the most was the positivity and the positive energy that you can give each other, even in the difficult times that matter. There's one question. Can you provide an example of when you chose family over work and how you handled it?
Oh, wow. That's a day-to-day sort of thing for sure. You know, the most recent example is I had a opportunity to sit down face to face with my child teacher to do a parent teachers conference. And, you know, we're in between, I'm in the process of relocating to Nashville. So as I mentioned to you beforehand, they're in Chicago. And shout out to Dad, who is holding down the fort with 2 kids. So we will give him claps here. Please tell him, if you ever meet my husband, that I did this. But, you know, I had the opportunity to either do it virtually or meet them in person. And I made the decision to meet in person. And I met in person because I think it signals to that child too, that, hey, you're important enough for mom to be home and have this conversation with your teacher. And I took them out afterwards and we had a day together, and making time for that level of balance for that child, as well as their development within school, I think is important. And I wanted him to see that he was still important enough for me that through Monday through Friday, I could take the time to support him in that way.
Good, great. And I'm sure he enjoyed it too. And it's nothing like parent-teacher conferences, which is often what I felt like we had, Terika, when we were growing together.
This is true. This is true. This is
Yeah.
true. Even recently, Dell, you know, I shared earlier, even taking this role, you and I had a conversation beforehand. I picked up the phone and she took my call at 10 o'clock at night. And I said, hey, this is something I'm thinking about. Weigh in for me.
Yeah, it was 10 o'clock, and Arden is and why Arden? Why Arden? Because we both talked about enjoy this wonderful company, but you tell me your why on Arden. Although I did promote it a little bit at 10 o'clock at night, but besides that part.
You definitely promoted it. I think a couple of things. I have been inspired by hearing our journey and where we're headed, Marty's vision of one team and how do we continue to grow this rich culture. I met with Marty and I was completely in awe, and the team, and seeing just where we've been and the goals, that it felt like something I could be a part of. And I'm really good about listening to my gut. When my gut says, "Hey, this resonates, it feels good," I go for it. When I have the question marks, when my gut doesn't necessarily feel 100% at ease, that's when I start to question things. And I tell you, when I was introduced to Arden, my gut definitely felt like this was a positive place to be.
Great.
We've got another question from the audience. How do you overcome the guilt that sometimes comes with balancing the work of mom, wife, daughter, COO? We always hear to be present in the moment. You are, but what are some actionable things you do to get over the guilt?
So I got from another mentor, and Dell, you know her, it was Margaret Lewis. And she
Oh,
was the division president. And she told me the reality is in leadership and in life as a woman, as a working woman, a working mom, or having a significant other, that you have to be okay with the fact that at some point, some key constituent within your life is going to be a little bit short. And today might be their day, but you will go back and you will make sure that you give them time. It may not be in that moment, but you will make sure that you go back and give them that time. And I've allowed that to kind of resonate for me in my life. I mean, it's not possible to be 100% there for my husband and my children, as I'm right now focusing right here at work in Nashville today and I'm with you all. But I'm going to give them their time. They will have their due. And on balance, I think it always tends to work out.
That's great advice.
I
Thank
think,
you.
well, and one thing is pay it forward. How do you pay it forward, Terika?
Yeah, and it's important. I truly believe that there is somebody somewhere who's truly vying for the seat that each and every one of us in, who aspire to be in your role. And so it's all incumbent upon all of us to bring someone with you and to mentor someone with you, to be an active mentor, because everybody is seeking guidance. Everyone needs a little bit of the light shown on the path of how to get there. So in terms of paying it forward, I do believe it's important to seek out individuals who you believe you can also influence. Because just as you're seeking mentors, they're seeking you. And someone wants to sit in your role today. So being very purposeful about that at the beginning of the year, I do sit down and I acknowledge and aspire to put down 3 to 5 people that I mentor. It is a dynamic relationship. It is one where we sit down. We also try to schedule those meetings ahead of time on the calendar so that they're there. We talk about a myriad of things depending upon what's happening in their worlds. But I have to make sure that I'm equally giving back to this pool and wealth of knowledge as a woman as much as I've taken. And so I think I encourage each of you to do the same, to think about how to mentor someone else towards that next step in their career. Dell, what about you?
Well, I would agree. And I think one of the things too, as we look at the third part of the journey is, and I've often been asked, as a mentor and mentee, and the same as having a mentee, does that relationship ever end in this prospective mentor-mentee relationship? And that's part of the pay it forward, because I've often been told, how many people can you mentor? How do you select the right mentor? What is the right mentor? What is a mentor supposed to do? And I know it's about the journey, but that's having that person along with you too. And also the balance that a mentor can give, a perspective that you may not. I mean, I was told by Margaret and several others, you can't fly the plane and work on the plane at the same time. So it may take others. And the best pro athletes in the world have coaches and mentors. So even at the top of the game of the football or basketball or golf, each one has a mentor or caddy to kind of help guide them, and that's a way of paying it forward. As much as you receive, I think as much as you give, and you never stop. That's not a hat you take on and off. I think that's the thing that Terika and I have learned together is you don't take the mentor hat off just because life goes on. You may put on another hat, but the relationship never ends, nor should you go in a mentor relationship thinking we're going to cut it off in 2022 or 2021. I mean, we're 15 years in it and we never thought we'd still be in this. And Terika has mentored me as well. We've had that exchange where sometime you all will realize that the mentee also can become the mentor and learning things from each other. Did you have something else, Julie, or someone else you wanted to ask as we look at our time? I want to be sensitive.
Sure, this is great. No, great feedback from both of you guys. Next question, and I guess this would probably go to either one, both of you. What's the worst leadership advice that you ever got that you need to tell us about?
Oh,
Go ahead and take it first, Dell.
okay, I will. I will. The worst leadership advice, I think, was good, and it was at the time. I was a CNO in Augusta, Georgia, and there were no other. And before I became a CNO, I only had my bachelor's degree, and I was told at that time that getting a master's degree was not going to make a difference. That it was where it was, who I was, and the environment I was in, that I could maintain my same education level and not make a difference. And to learn to be okay where I was and not pursue it forward, because at the time I had in my leadership perspective, leaders change, and so I had a change in my leadership. My CNO had resigned, my CEO had retired, and the perspective was that I might not, if I decide to pursue leadership, I might not be there very long. So stay where I was and do it. And that advice propelled me to want to do more. And that was part of the whole journey with the development program is these were young people who were in their master's prepared program pursuing education. By no fault of theirs, they wanted to make a difference. And that's what propelled me to go back to school. So it was the advice of don't do it. Terika?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Mhm.
I was told that you can't have it all, so I had to decide. And something in me just
Knowing you.
it became like a quest. Like, of course you can have it all. You have to define it, you have to make time for it, you have to schedule for it. But if you want these things in your life and it's important, then you absolutely can have it all.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Next question, you talked a little bit about authenticity earlier, and so there's a follow-up question to that. How much should you share with your leader about other facets of your life, like family, sick parents, things like that, especially if you're going through something at the time?
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Well, I was going to say one of the mentoring advice that we learned in the program that I've helped associates with is be open to share part of your life with people. That is so key. People can help you when they know. And I know some of us are very proud and very protective of ourselves. But when you know your work family, you're spending as much time with your work family as you are with your home family. That's key to share. And we tell our employees all the time and our peers to tell me what's going on so we can be a part of their lives. They want just as much to be a part of our life. Go ahead, Terika.
No, that resonates. That absolutely resonates. I think everything you said is key. I think that we all have to, um, I think I'm just gonna put a period there. You said it correctly.
Well, and I'll add to it, had we not known the experiences with your mom or
Yeah,
with, as we were going through children and how to navigate life experiences,
yeah.
how would you be able to help and mentor someone if you didn't know that? So I was fortunate to have that experience, to go through that with you and several others through kids, through marriage, through family, that, maybe the day that you just be there for them.
Yeah. And I'll share that with you, and maybe I will expand. I said period, but maybe I will expand. I think it is important to be authentic. It is important to share those moments because it's gonna happen where something pops up. And so if your leader does not know kind of some of the other facets of who you are as a person, it's harder for them to support you. And I'm thinking of an example. I had just had a baby, and we were opening a brand new de novo hospital and had to go back to work in 2.5 weeks, right? And so you that's an area where, hey, this is a real life scenario. This is real life, and yet these two areas are intersecting, and I need support on both sides of the fence in order to be successful. So being honest with my boss at the time, being honest with my husband about what's going on, and having a plan that everybody is on board with, that's key. But you can only do that through authenticity and being clear about kind of what's happening in your world.
So that brings up a follow-up question, Terika, when you mentioned your husband and how he had aspirations, and you just mentioned again now, how do you and your husband manage how you're going to support each other's careers when career growth for one may not allow your spouse's career growth? What kind of conversations and how do you handle that?
I think probably the best best step as a woman is to create and make sure you have the right partner. And I chose well. So, we're very supportive of each other. There's been times where I've had to take a step to the side to allow him to pursue his passion. And he does that for me. And we communicate well. We are honest with each other when things are working and when things aren't. And I will tell you right now that it has not always been easy. And we have had our rough moments. The other day was my son's birthday and I forgot. And so he scrambled for me. And I appreciated that. So, we've had to make those trade-offs through communication, but being honest with ourselves around, where we aspire to be and being all in to supporting each other.
I think just sharing the fact that you forgot, like we always do, you forgot your kid's birthday. Oh my, but I think that level of vulnerability allows us to see true leadership, that leaders are not always making the right decisions and right choices, that we do forget, that we do learn from each other.
Sure.
Okay, we have a fun question to end our questions here. Is there a favorite book you're reading, or what are you binging on TV right now? Both of you.
That's good. I have a couple of books that I love. I'm gonna give a fun book that I'm reading, but also a book that I just recommend for women. The book I recommend for women, there's a book called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office 101. And it's a fun read that allows you to do a little self-assessment. The title's kind of kitschy, don't worry about that. But it's a good one that I recommend to all of my mentees. It gives you a sense of your blind spots. And I think that's key. And I give it to men and women, so just in full transparency. And then right now I am reading The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, and it's 800 pages, and I'm only halfway through. And it's a bit of a haul, but that's part of what I'm reading in my fun time. Dell?
And mine is a very fun but simple read, and I also share it with many others, and it's Who Moved My Cheese? And then the second one is The Places We Go. Back in the Georgia division, a mentor named Charlie Evans, we had a division meeting with all the executives there, and he actually sat there and read the book by Dr. Seuss, The Places We Go. And it was just inspiring because you think, oh, it's a children's book, but it's a lot buried in that Dr. Seuss book. And Who Moved My Cheese is good. Do you stay in the same place waiting on the same result all the time, or do you move? And that's as simple as that message is. It matters, and it's those. I'm a short reader, so when I can get it in 20 pages or less, big font, and have pictures, I'm good. So I think I've not binge watched in a while because I'm a comedy person. So the latest I probably binge watched was Lucy. I can't get enough of I Love Lucy, over and over because it's just simple relationships with people that matter, that no matter what they went through in those TV shows like that. And then I've been binge watching Andy Griffin. I know that dates me, but it's the relationships with the people in the community that matters.
Great, great stuff there. I want to thank both Dell and Terika for your time today. Great and inspirational stories. As a new mom, this really resonates with me, and I'm still trying to find the balance, and this gives me great hope. So I appreciate your guys' time. For those of you that in the audience, please use the QR code to complete the post-session survey or click on the link at the WebEx chat. This survey helps us plan for future sessions in terms of topics and speakers, as well as how Women at Arden can better support you. Looking forward to our February Women at Arden webinar. It's scheduled for Friday, February 25th, and the topic is communication, so look for more details soon. And then thank you for attending today's session. We will email the recording of this webinar and related resources next week. If you enjoyed the program, please encourage others to attend the future events. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.